Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Wishing you a very happy half-off holiday because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day, yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Hello, family. I'm Janaya Future Khan, and this is Dark Woke. Just before we hit it, I want to say thank you to all the listeners out there, and a special shout out to the supporters who make this show possible. It truly means the world to me. If you'd like to become a member, our Patreon is linked in the episode right up below. Okay, we got a lot to get through. I want to name a couple of housekeeping things. One, I don't know if ads are running on this yet. I have no idea. Corey and I are trying to figure out a bunch of stuff. And yes, we are aware that nothing is coming up on Apple. There's clearly a conspiracy on Black hummus, but we're working on it tirelessly. I promise you. They've gotten so many emails and, working out the bugs. We're doing some quick hits today, and we're going to be talking about what is happening in Jamaica right now with this unbelievable, terrifying hurricane and connecting it to Hurricane Katrina and what we've learned in the past 20 years, right? Because I was thinking about it, and one of the struggles that we have in America and really in the West is imagining other people as we would ourselves. It seems to be a very difficult thing. Now, it's been easy for me, right? I am half Jamaican. A lot of people, I know many Jamaicans. I know so many Jamaicans. It always sounds ridiculous when we say things like that, but it's true. I grew up among Jamaicans. It's a huge population in Toronto, and also just a part of my heritage, a part of my community, a part of my world, a part of my life, part of my family. So this hits home, and it reminded me of a feeling, that sense of uncertainty and powerlessness and just the unbelievably enraging injustice of it all. What has a yardie done, right? I'm not talking about if you live out there, okay? What exploitation of land and resources, right? That would justify this kind of unprecedented storm. It is stronger than Hurricane Katrina. And when we really go through the devastation and what we learned since then, because honestly, that moment, when I went back and did some math, and it took me a long time. It's just not my thing. Math and I have broken up a long time ago. I realized that everything that happened, the radicalizing moment for really so many in this generation, was Hurricane Katrina. I think we go back and we're like, Ferguson, but it really didn't start with that. It started with a narrative, right? And I'm going to break that down. But before we get into it and what responsible actions we can take right now, as in what can we literally do to support the folks back home, in Jamaica, in Jamrock, right? Before that, we'll have a couple of quick hits. Because we need a little something, and yes, I do have a rant in me about Marx and capitalism and hoarding resources and controlling the means of production, which is how we all got here. I feel like I gave the good old cap a little bit of a pass, but I want to get into all the good things in these quick hits before we get into the important things coming up. For one, I am watching the World Series. I'm not a huge baseball fan, but God damn it, give me a finals. Give me some good green and I'm watching it. But also, Ohtani is so fine. And the Blue Jays are in it. That's my life coming together in a really nice way. But I was thinking about it. I'm like, all the Dodgers fans I know, 100% Mexican. Right, I know that there's like some white Dodgers fans. I just don't see them. And it occurred to me, right, that like with Shohei Ohtani's generational run, there's going to be a lot of Mexican babies named after him. Like there's going to be like like a Shohei Garcia, Shohei Hernandez, Shohei Perez. They're just going to be some Otani Mexican babies running around. Because how could that not be true? The other thing that got me, this is a headline. I couldn't believe it when I read it. Okay, so this is in the Crimson. So Harvard's little newspaper, right? Okay. So it said a student flung a brick at a window right on Saturday. And I was like, I gotta know why. Like, a brick is a very specific thing. You have to, first of all, you have to find it. You have to find it. You have to know where a brick is. And it's lumbering. It's depending on the size of your hand, it's an easy throw. It's a tough throw. It doesn't flow well. I got to know the story behind it. It turns out. Okay. And I want to be clear, like, all love to this young person who's probably going through some shit. But do you want to know what set him off? It was his roommate using the word labubu. One of those little monster-shaped dolls that are just this like annoying global phenomenon. I think it's cute. It's like the Stanley, water cup all over again. But this nigga had it. It's the sub the sub line very much suggested that a Harvard student seemed to have a psychotic break triggered by the word labubu. And I was like, I can't imagine. Like, everybody on campus must have one. He's just being haunted by fucking labubus everywhere. Anyway, we have a full episode, so I don't want to spend too much time yapping about the funny things. Jamaica, right? Meteorologists are terrified of this storm. Meteorologists, not regular people, the people who would know to be terrified, right? They're calling this the storm of the century. Okay, and I want you to think about something, right? The infrastructure. Think about the infrastructure when a storm hits. First of all, nobody knew it would be this strong. Yes, we have technologies. Yes, we're monitoring it. And of course, government funding to these things, these technologies are being cut all the time. We used to have worldwide cooperation and information sharing, right? But if those resources are being cut after we have in the West extracted wealth and resources from other countries to develop the ones that we live in, right? And then we say, oh, we're leaders in science and health and medicine, right? Meanwhile, here in America, they're trying to privatize weather fucking apps, right? So that the already disgustingly wealthy can make even more money, even if it means people die, right? That never seemed to be a deal breaker before. So why this is in part unprecedented is how quickly it changed, how much the intensity with which it became a storm that was stronger than Hurricane Katrina, right? I want to be clear. Leading experts, every single one, is saying that this storm is 1,000%, right, informed by the warming waters, right? Its rapid intensification has everything to do with global warming, right? That's just it. And when you think of the geography of Jamaica, I want you to think about the lowlands. That's where a lot of people live. They live in lowlands. These lands are very much susceptible to flooding, much like many areas in the Caribbean, right? I want us to remember that in the 12 million or so, really closer to 13 million enslaved Africans that were stolen from the continent, right? Only around 300,000 or so came to the U.S. first, right? They were taken into the Caribbean before then. And of course, sometimes they were transferred to different places. They didn't have a say, right? And slavery became a generational thing. So there were generations of people in enslavement. This is what I'm referring to as the Atlantic slave trade. So it was simply a matter of where the boat stopped. Do you see what I'm saying? Everything is connected. It's simply a matter of where the boat stopped. Oh, again, out of 13 million people that were taken directly from the continent, which is an extraordinary amount. It's hard to wrap your head around, right? The transportation, the forced enslavement transportation on fucking ships, right? Of 12 million, really closer to 13 million African peoples. 300,000 came directly here. These are not the stories that were told. And so everything that we're seeing is the legacy of that, right? For those countries that were able to wrest freedom from their enslavers, most historic one, of course, being Haiti, right? But of course, we also know that Jamaicans were able to wrest freedom for themselves. With Haiti, it is still, if not, is the poorest country in the world because the world was so angry, right? They were so angry that Haiti's revolution against its French occupiers was successful, that they made them pay back reparations to France, right? And were ostracized by the world over. These are not the stories that we're often told. Before I jump into the impact of the storm, if you have a pen or a paper, if you've got a good memory, I want you to, because immediately it's like, what can we do, right? Caribbean Strong is a South Florida organization. They're just on MSNBC. And they're preparing to send critical resources to Jamaica. So they were already prepared to do this. They support the Caribbean. And so the channels of transportation and the pipeline around resources is established. And they have places all over, North America. This is what they said to bring, right? To send to them or send them money to help. But bottled water, tarps, tents, solar powered lights, generators, work gloves, yard waste bags, canned foods, 1 year away from the expiration date. So don't bring nobody nothing that's like, a month out, nasties. And of course, non-perishable foods, again, a year, industrial sponges, toiletries, so sanitary and dignity kits, right? These include like socks and hand sanitizer and, wipes, all that stuff, washcloth and deodorant. These are people who wash their legs. You hear me? These are leg washers. You send washcloths. Nasties. Just running around like baboons, not washing your legs. Yardi would say kiss teeth right now, okay? Hairbrush, toothbrushes, toothpaste, shampoos, right? Small. They want small, easy to transport, not going to burst open in transit. Deodorant, first aid kits, medicine. So we're thinking aspirin, Pepto-Bismol, right? Advil, nebulizer, asthma pumps. Think of me and my little preemie lungs. Okay, sleeping bags, blankets, pillows, mats, towels, baby wipes, food and diapers, batteries, flashlights, solar lanterns, sleeping bags, again, pillows, mats, and, clothes. Do not bring clothes, I think no, they would need clothes. I don't know why. Oh, do you know what? That's a different list. So it's SFL, CaribbeanStrong.org. Okay, the SFL is like South Florida. So that's a good place to go. These are some actions that you can take immediately to support our Jamaicans. The reason why the world is a much better place. They have a rich history of revolution, a rich history of literature. If you've even never read Marlon James, you owe something, So this is a way that we can actually take real action to help make people's lives better. Okay. So I want to break down why meteorologists are so terrified at Hurricane Melissa, right? Which is like, it shouldn't have a social worker name. It's very misleading. It's very, very misleading. They're terrified because it became so intense so fast. Like a second way of measuring hurricanes, right? There's the first way, which is, accumulation of all the data and the concentration of moisture and, but the wind speed is a major one, right? So Hurricane Melissa startled meteorologists with its strength and the speed at which it intensified, right? So 70 miles per hour on a Saturday, as the storm, was forming around the Atlantic Basin. It was slower than 74 miles per hour, right? And then just 24 hours later, it jumped to 140 miles per hour. That's a category 4 strength, right? We now know it's a category 5. We might not even have a category for what it is. Tuesday, the morning, looking at sustained winds of 185 miles per hour. Okay. So again, many Jamaicans live in the lowlands, right? The point I was making before that I completely forgot and I'm picking up now, thank you, is, in understanding that the landscape and the population is really informed and shaped in some part by the Atlantic slave trade, so is where people live, right? And these, look at America. Nobody is exempt. We haven't all lived beyond the Atlantic slave trade. I know that's really hard for people to understand. We haven't even lived longer than slavery has been abolished in America yet, right? So oftentimes those in the lowland are the people who are most economically disenfranchised. And that has a long, long legacy, right? Very much informed by the Atlantic slave trade. Same thing is true for Trinidad, which is the other half of me. In the highlands, you have people who have more wealth, more money, usually much, much lighter, or white. They live in the highlands, right? In the lowlands, you have people who are economically disenfranchised. They happen to also be darker, less educated because of lack of resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So those flatlands, those lowlands are already susceptible to flooding. Those homes, that infrastructure, gone. That's scary. That's hundreds of thousands of people, if not more. Right. Why am I drawing a comparison between Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Melissa? And it's similar to the slave trade as a whole, right? The legacy of one is informing the other, right? It's happening somewhere else, not to us, not here. And that was the way that much of America addressed Hurricane Katrina, right? It was a different America. New Orleans, Louisiana, the whole thing, different America, not an America, right? Not an America that I know. And we've hit the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina this year, right? 20 years ago, we had Hurricane Katrina. That storm killed more than 1,300 people. And it displaced tens of thousands more, right? From it, we had 1.5 million people who were evacuated from Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama as a result of the storm's damage. Of those evacuees, 40% never returned home. Right? These are not the stories that we know if we don't pay attention, if we don't keep reading, right? Overall, and I think the death count increased. It was closer to 1,400 deaths. There were nearly 1,400, right? So it was 1,300 and something. And you had, over 1 million people displaced. It was, if you think about it, it's one of the largest forced migrations of Black Americans since the Great Migration, right? Again, everything is pulled. And that is, of course, drawing parallel with, Black Americans who moved from southern to northern states between the 1910s and 70s. Allende has great work on that if you want to read it. But it was an effort to escape pervasive violence and oppression, right? What do we know? What do we know, right? What do we know after we witnessed 20 years ago, the National Guard shooting people who were trying to get resources to live because there was no national response? 5 days after the worst storm that's ever hit America, right? What do we do when what do we know now after 20 years after Black folks and other folks who were trapped there were getting cholera from drinking contaminated water because there was no national response, right? In the years since Katrina, there's been a slew of studies, but my favorite are some of the government reports because they at a different point in time, they had to write this shit that was just factually true because there were too many checks and balances. And what do we know? What do we know since then? That the government itself, right? And you can get up on biotech.law.lsu.edu, right? With a couple of names like Katrina, GovDocs, Katrina Lessons, PDF, right? We know that the majority of the deaths and much of the destruction, we're talking about millions and millions and millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars. All of it could have been avoided. Most of it could have been avoided. So the government failed. That's not in question, right? It's a universally accepted fact, right? The levies. I always wonder if I always want to say levies. Is it levies? You know Corey's here somewhere? You're so pretty. It's levies, right? I think my water bottle is leaking. Yes. See, now you have a word that you don't know. Oh, sorry. Okay. It's a theme on this show. It's a theme. It's a theme for people who read more than they talk, I guess. Okay. Levees, right, that were meant to be built and maintained by the federal government. What happened? We know they collapsed during and after the storm, which caused massive flooding in New Orleans. Local, state, and federal officials did not do a good job evacuating people or rescuing people or housing people as the disaster unfolded, right? And it's in the hardest hit parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. What do we know, right? Remember when Bush was president and he was the worst fucking guy? Remember when Bush was the worst fucking guy? And low-key stole that election? There's an alt universe where Gore won. I'm not saying it was perfect. I'm saying that we were hotter in the right way. Not hotter because of global warming. Hotter because we were happier. But it's okay. Even in our suffering, we still got to look. So, yeah, George Bush acknowledged in a speech 3 weeks after the storm, right, that the system, this is what he says, quote, the system at every level of government was not well coordinated and was overwhelmed in the first few days. You've got to ask yourself, though, right, after no response, why would the government suddenly acknowledge what it did? Why would it acknowledge its failure? It's not, I don't know if you guys know this, but it doesn't love doing that, right? It doesn't love being like, oh, we fucked this up. It only concedes when it's forced to concede, right? And if we go back, there was one agency in particular, and that was the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, right? FEMA became the face of this disaster, right? It was FEMA's job is to respond to disasters that overwhelm the capabilities of local and state governments. That's the point of FEMA. So it's supposed to coordinate search and rescue efforts, right? Emergency shelters, mass evacuation, and debris removal after disasters, right? That's what it's supposed to do. But it took days for federal help to arrive in New Orleans, right? We saw images of survivors on rooftops stuck there, right? Their homes just absolutely flooded completely through, right? We saw people walking through chest high water with elderly people and young people trying to get to safety, right? 2 weeks after the storm made landfall, I seem to recall the FEMA director, Michael Brown, resigned, right? Because of the public outcry, which is the second half of this, people understood that FEMA was irredeemably broken. There was a bipartisan effort in Congress back when that shit was still possible to dismantle the agency altogether and to replace it with a new emergency office. But in 2006, Congress instead chose to strengthen and expand FEMA. So it was given more money and power to respond to major disasters faster, right? And FEMA was henceforth required to only allow leaders who were experts in disaster, which you'd think was the thing before, but it actually wasn't, right? And now the changes that were made back then are being reversed by Donald Trump now, right? Right now. So it's cut billions of dollars from disaster preparedness programs and is considering eliminating FEMA altogether. Remember, they want to destroy every federal aspect of this government, every public good that we have fought for. FEMA and Congress wasn't like, hey, we should probably do the right thing. That's not how this works. We don't have rights or protections because the government and the corporatocracy are thoughtful, caring entities. Oh no, we have them because we fucking fought and we fought together and somehow made a miracle of winning. Because that's what happens when we fucking fight. That's why the thought of us fighting is so dangerous, so scary, right? Of course, we know the admin is saying that, oh, it's about, we want to get rid of wasteful federal spending. No, they want to clear their tax breaks, right? They have pillaged, stolen so much money from the American peoples, really from the American economy, that they can no longer cover the spread for the deficit that they're making in their tax breaks. So they're cutting down on everything federal, okay? We can anticipate that storms are only going to get worse here. We've seen storms, we've seen droughts, we've seen pandemics, warming temperatures, prehistoric illnesses, right? Warming temperatures, ripe conditions for viruses, for viral evolutions, for rampant spreading. And we're seeing an administration cut any infrastructure that would detect these things, address these things, let alone the disasters that come with global warming, right? This is not a great picture. Again, though, when we fight, we fucking win. What are the things that the Trump admin, the changes that were made in 2006 that the Trump administration is seeking to reverse? What are they? Number one, FEMA's leader must be an emergency expert. Fucking take my life. You know what? Where's my brick? I'll put it through that window right now. Trump is my labubu. You know that that's a thing. They should probably be an expert in the thing that they're leading, but Michael Brown had no professional background in managing disasters, right? I looked into it, right? He was a college friend of President Bush. And again, there's a lot of parallels between Bush and this administration. That was, as many people said back then, a very serious, it was more than a warning sign. It was more than a red flag. It was the blueprint for stealing an election, right? But this nepotism is part and parcel, right, for DEI hires, as we know. So this guy was a friend. And do you want to know what this guy, the former leader of FEMA, was before he became the leader of FEMA? He was the former commissioner and of the International Arabian Horse Administration. I will fucking take everything out. I will take us all out. Are you Arabian Horse Administration? I didn't even fucking know that existed. I did look at the horses. They're very pretty. Number two, right? The post-Katrina change that was made to FEMA that Trump wants to eradicate. FEMA can act faster. FEMA can act fast. FEMA should respond faster to disasters when they're happening. In fact, that's probably what they should do, right? Congress gave the president and FEMA, right, authority to move resources to an area even before a storm arrived and before local officials asked for assistance. That was directly because of Katrina, right? And number three, FEMA helps communities prepare before disaster. These are the things that he wants to eradicate. Now, here's the thing. This isn't because Congress was like, hey, guys, hey, this was bad, and we should change this. Bush wasn't like, oh God, what's happening? What's happening in Louisiana and Mississippi? We're going to do something about it right now. I was aware of this weather event and we're taking action before anything even happens. Right in Cuba right now, which is also going to be hit by Hurricane Melissa, not directly the way that Jamaica is, but 600,000 people are being evacuated right now. Do you want to know what Cuba's government said? We will spare no expense to save every life we can. 600,000 people were bussed out before the worst parts of the storm were hit. Of course, the question in the news is, do they have enough places for people to live in Cuba? Like when you move them? Yeah, bitch. Yes. Yes. Schoolhouses, churches, buildings, whatever, right? But imagine hearing that, will spare no expense for your safety. Are you fucking kidding me? I was like, I heard that, and it was a panty dropper line. The panties dropped. But there was a moment in the public zeitgeist related to Hurricane Katrina that didn't just change the perception of what was happening in Louisiana, right? It didn't change the perception of it simply to the imagination of the American people. No, it became one of the most generational galvanizing moments that we've had. And I only just made this connection, right? So with that, why don't I bring Corey on, who is our pop culture hand, who will break down that moment. He'll give us the moment. I will break down one side of it, which was its impact, and he will break down what became of this thing that changed everything. Okay, Corey.
Hi. I'm not this concept anymore. I'm real.
See, I wasn't making him up, you guys.
This
I
time.
wasn't making him up. It's true, actually. I was talking to you before you even arrived, Corey.
I know. I felt in my bones and I said, let me just show up real quick for the girls.
For the girls, we talk so much shit, so this is like kind of perfect for me. But you be knowing the Gus and Corey, born and raised, Black American, super fine, all those things. So these moments that I'm talking about, that some of you know intimately, many of you will not, is something that literally shaped the experience of Black Americans across the country and, honestly, Black folks around the world. It was a galvanizing moment. But Corey, pray tell, what was the inciting event? I can't seem to recall.
It was during a Red Cross relief broadcast. On-screen host Mike Myers and Kanye West were just
Called Kanye. Let's just refer to him as Kanye because the other one is harder for me to grasp.
Kanye. Yes, Kanye and Mike Myers were reading from a teleprompter, and they were sort of just going through what the people of New Orleans needed in terms of aid, how disastrous the hurricane was, and how they needed these funds to help them repair and to sort of, be safe and things like that. But, Kanye, as we know him, threw a curveball in one of the most iconic moments of pop history I would say in the last 20 years. So let's go ahead and play this clip and you guys will hear it for yourself.
With the breach of 3 levees protecting New Orleans, the landscape of the city has changed dramatically, tragically, and perhaps irreversibly. There's now over 25 feet of water where there was once city streets and thriving neighborhoods.
I hate the way they portray us in the media. If you see a Black family, it says they're looting. See a white family, it says they're looking for food. And it's been 5 days because most of the people are Black. And even for me to complain about, I would be a hypocrite because I've tried to turn away from the TV because it's too hard to watch. I've even been shopping before even giving a donation. So now I'm calling my business manager right now to see what is the biggest amount I can give, and just to imagine if I was down there, and those are my people down there. So anybody out there that wants to do anything that we can help with the setup, the way America is set up to help the poor, the Black people, the less well off as slow as possible. I mean, Red Cross is doing everything they can. We already realize a lot of the people that could help are at war right now, fighting another way, and they've given them permission to go down and shoot us.
Now, couple things. One, I would like us to look at Mike Myers' face during this whole ordeal. His face is scrunched up like the mini wrinkles on a prune. And that was because Kanye West, before they went live, told Mike Myers actually, hey, I'm going to just improv and ad-lib a little bit to sort of like say what I'm feeling. And Mike Myers said, okay. And then he just launches into this very surprising, very true, sort of real in the moment, sort of, statement of how he felt at the time. You can tell by his voice. He was very, very upset by it. And just learning that, the president at the time, George W. Bush, sent troops to, shoot, to kill people who were, quote unquote, looting to just find food and, supplies to save their family because the disaster relief response was not fast enough.
Yeah. And it really wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. And, I hate the way they portray us in the media, right? There was something so profound about that, because that was something taken for granted. That was a moment in time, right? And I remember that was referred to as colorblind, right? It was before white people were like, I'm that white, by saying I read Ta-Nehisi Coates, before he started talking about reparations, because then they dropped him super fast. Like, they hot potatoed his ass. They were like, what? What? Right? But before, it was like, oh, have you read that Ta-Nehisi? Have you read Between the World and Me? It was basically like, are you well versed in race relations right now in America? That entire generation was understood to be colorblind. Colorblind was the cultural norm. It was how white people said, I'm not a racist. I don't even see color. It doesn't exist to me. It's about we live in a meritocracy now. And so the existence of racism was thought to have been kind of a thing of the past, right? Scholarships on post-colonial work, post-racial societies, it was all coming out, that was it. So how did that end? What was that singular moment, Corey, that acted as that lightning rod?
The button to this already electrifying, really, really, really intense takedown of the government at that time in 2005 was bookended by this just culturally reset of a statement, which is as follows.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
And there it is.
Ooh, what a line. What a line. And I remember did they cut him? They cut him off immediately after, right?
They cut to a confused, bewildered Chris Tucker, who sort of kind of looked like he was gonna laugh a little bit, because not only was it was a 1-2 punch, right? Kanye West started by going off script, going off teleprompter, saying real, true, real in the moment, things about how he was feeling about the situation and sort of pledging his support. And then Mike Myers kind of looked over at Kanye and said, okay, back to the teleprompter. And then, Mike Myers was essentially supposed to end that segment. It was supposed to cut to Chris Tucker, but Kanye West got that one knife twist in, which was just
Donda was with him in that moment. If I could do Mike, it was like, did I get it? Did I get Mike Myers down?
For our audio listeners, Future just made I would say it was about maybe 70% accurate to the face that Mike Myers made. It was a combination of cringe, uncomfortable, shock, and a little bit of confusion.
Confusion. I'm going to tell you something I did not know, right? I'm going to break this down because it made sense when I thought about it, but when I really fucking thought about it, because I'm so keenly aware of like how little Jamaica factors into the imagination. This is what connection I made that I didn't make before. And it pertains to how we got to this moment in time. Because again, we're not thinking of Jamaica as, literally someplace that I personally relate to. That's not what the Western imagination encourages. It just so happens that it's very easy for me to embody what that experience might be like, right? And that's empathy, but also because I grew up with folks and there's a reason why segregation exists, right? It's so wild because in the language that was used and how Louisiana, Mississippi, these states were treated, they were seen as foreign. They were seen as foreign as Jamaica is, to the American imagination, which is wild. And it's what happens, of course, when you have the history that America does, but also when you create tiered types of citizenship where not everybody gets to engage, right? One of the things that came out of the absolute displacement, the rapid disenfranchisement, the loss of wealth, the loss of resources, the loss of land, right? Voter disenfranchisement, right? It really, really concretized and was concentrated in those areas. That's where gerrymandering really started to take hold. We were getting warning signs of what was happening in the South long before we got to this present point in time. But I'm really starting to see, to my immense chagrin and frustration, that once again, it is Black liberation that will see us through. And I'm so mad at that as an adorable nignog who just wants to live my life, because then I have to convince people that that's the thing. And I look too much like it. Where's the Tim Wise now? No, the last thing we need is another. Yeah, but I actually quite like him. But with him, you get a Robin DiAngelo, and, I'll detransition to fight that girl. Anyway, what happened? What happened after Katrina? I'm going to give you a timeline, right? In the same year, 2005, Color of Change was founded. And Color of Change was founded, right, directly in response to Hurricane Katrina. I forgot that. Now, remember, I was at Color of Change between 2018 and 2020 to boost my game up. I wanted to develop a corporate strategy. I also wanted to be on the winning side. They are the ones who created the infrastructure to target ads. They were literally the leaders on that and got Glenn Beck on air. Of course, we know now Hydra has many ahead, but they were winning at the time. So, and it was as a direct result of Hurricane Katrina. I think if Kanye West, right, the Kanye that we knew at that time, hadn't said what he said, I don't know that we would have gotten Color of Change in the way that we did. And all the subsequent things that happen. And, revolution is an inevitable thing. It's a series of spontaneous events. But it's always in a very specific time frame. And our ability to make those connections changes everything. A connection was made in Color of Change. They make an organization. They now have several million members, right? The leading online racial justice organization in the country, founded again as a direct result of Hurricane Katrina. And what does it do? Right? They move decision makers and corporations and government to eliminate policies that hold Black people back, right? And enforce and adopt solutions that help to progress the nation forward. But that's not it, right? October 15th, later that year, the same year as Katrina, 2005, right? That's when we saw mass mobilization. Oh, something that was happening before Occupy? Yeah, you guys, yeah. The Millions More movement. I absolutely would have named it something else. Ridiculous name. But the Millions More movement was held to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the Million Man March that happened in 1995. What was the Million Man March about in 1995? Drawing attention to issues of racial justice and community, empowerment, economic empowerment, everything else. So we had that. A mass mobilization effort, a leading racial justice organization. Of course, there were several more events, but let's move on. I want to tell you about the events. I'm all the way in Canada. I'm in Canada. I'm in Canada with my Caribbean brethren, living my little life, a baby revolutionary. These are all stories that came to me from here on in, right? Online, in discourse. That's how big they were. So we had, remember Jenna 6, right? It refers to 6 Black teenagers who were charged with attempted murder in Jenna, Louisiana in 2006, right? Because a white student was assaulted. This case drew national attention. I want to remind you that a producer and rapper, right, at that time had to get on live television and literally say the president doesn't care about Black people in an era of colorblindness to get to this place where now we're getting stories covered by mainstream media that they weren't inclined to cover before, right? When they were charged with attempted murder, the case drew national attention because nooses were found hanging, in a tree near their high school, right? Of course, what followed was widespread protests. There was serious and disgusting and reprehensible racial injustice in the legal system, right? Each of the students were tried individually. They were in front of all white juries, right? Their charges were extraordinarily high. We're talking about attempted murder because so many people intervened, right? The Gen 6 got legal assistance from the NAACP and the ACLU, right? Especially when those all-white juries were selected in each case. The Gen 6 individual cases, 6 black teenagers, all white juries for every single one, right? Because protesters were marching, 20,000 people who marched in Jena, a town of 3,000 residents. Okay, these protests drew attention to incidents where white students were treated much more leniently. Right, Jesse Jackson, he was all right. Martin Luther King III, Al Sharpton, back when he was thicky thick, and folks like Ice Cube, Salt and Pepper, most that they all got involved. The charges were reduced, plea bargains were made. Only one ended up serving any jail time. Then what happened? Oh, right, 2008. Obama, right, runs in 2008. He's sworn in 2009, right? I want you to think about what that moment was like. Suddenly it felt like change was possible. Less so for me because of the president necessarily, and more so for the things surrounding the president, right? The congressional apology for slavery that happened in June 2009. It's kind of funny, actually. The U.S. Congress issued a formal apology, right, for enslavement and its Jim Crow laws that followed. And the resolution acknowledged that injustice and brutality of those policies, they were like, oh, that was bad. Of course, it excluded any provision for reparations. They were like, we've definitely fucking did this. It definitely caused generational trauma and disenfranchisement, but we're not giving you shit for that, right? And again, it apologized for slavery. Here's a quote in its formal apology in Congress, right? The quote, fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, and inhumanity of slavery, right? But again, no reparations. It was really clear about that. Super, super clear. We know that there's a recession that's happening. The recession had a disproportionate effect on Black Americans, right? While Obama was expanding Medicaid coverage at that time, Black families were still experiencing unbelievable economic hardship, job losses, and foreclosures. What was clear was the predatory nature of private equity firms, right? And loan entities, and how Black folks were systemically and systematically exploited by a system that was designed to do so. Back where I am, something comes across, my desk, right? The murder of Oscar Grant. Remember him? The 22-year-old Black kid, young man, a father, murdered by BART police on New Year's Day. So this is technically 2008, 2009, right? This is before Obama sworn in. He was shot in the back by Bay Area Rapid Transit. It was an officer named, was it Mercerl? Something like that, right? He was on the floor. Oscar Grant was on the floor of a train station in Oakland. He was shot in the back. The police officer, in a rare moment, a jury found him guilty, but of involuntary manslaughter. He served 11 months for it. And as you know, you can get your job back when you're a cop, right? Something's starting to happen. People are starting to make connections. The internet is allowing us to do that. People were learning things they didn't know. They had accepted this colorblind narrative that every person of color, but Black people and especially across the West, were like, what are you talking about? But there was this social contract of silence that was constantly being enforced, right? I mean, we still yapped, but you know what I mean. 2010, what happens? The new Jim Crow. Michelle Alexander's book, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. It was fucking explosive. We're all nerds, right? The entire criminal justice system was on trial, right? What made it so important, right? Exposed racial discrimination all the way from lawmaking to policing to denial of voting rights to ex-prisoners, right? It formed a connection between then and now. We were able to make a connection between the abolishment of slavery and the creation of plantation prisons, right? Vagrancy laws, literally ways designed to criminalize and steal Black people in legal ways after white slave owners were given reparations, right? The Electoral College. Remember, we talked about the concessions to racists, that we just keep making concessions. And actually, your entire experience of this country is also shaped by racism. Your vote doesn't matter because of the Electoral College, right? Your vote does not matter. The gerrymandering that's happened, the voter theft, if we don't intervene when Black people are being harmed anywhere, it's going to catch up with us everywhere. We say all the time, when the most marginalized have what they need, everyone has what they need. But back then, I think we were better read on what the most marginalized meant. It wasn't my opinion. You know, it's what serving the most oppressed people by also serving, everybody else. Not my suffering is unique and I am the only person who's ever experienced it before in the world, right? And remember that 13th Ava DuVernay's docuseries, I guess, or film on Netflix was directly informed by that book. There was a hunger. There was an awareness growing, a conversation that was happening. We were talking about mass incarceration. I thought, oh my God, maybe, just maybe things will change. In 2011, there's the execution of Troy Anthony Davis. Again, I'm all the way in Canada. This is coming to me organically, right? I'm fledgling. I'm not a radical in practice. I'm a radical in theory. I was a little bit of a radical in practice, but honestly, it was hard in Toronto. You know what I mean? But something's happening, right? This is a case that caught national attention. Troy Anthony Davis was executed on September 21st, 2011, right? He was executed for the murder of a police officer, a crime he always maintained he did not commit, and a crime that every expert that was unbiased agreed simply did not have sufficient evidence on. He was innocent. Pleas were made, right? In the months leading up to his execution, people around the country urged Georgia to reconsider the execution because there were serious doubts, right? The Guardian had a great article on it. It's still up. Troy Davis' execution goes ahead despite serious doubts about his guilt. There were massive gaps about what happened that day. And there was a national outcry. This couldn't have happened if this connective tissue wasn't forming into a body, right? From the making of Color of Change, right, to the internet and us talking to each other and everything else. Calls were made to stay his execution. The NAACP, the Innocence Project, Amnesty International. The state moved ahead with his execution anyway. This is a good moment to remember, right, that even though 21 states have abolished the death penalty, there are those who still continue to use capital punishment. This administration is a huge proponent of it, right? But of course, this is not distinct or separate from America's history of racism. This was, all the way back in 2020, this stat, but 52% of people on death row were Black, even though they're just 13% of the population here. And it's disproportionately Black men who are being executed by the state.
Hi, it's Eva Longoria, and let's be real. After 40, we should ask for more from our skincare. I swear by Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. With vitamin C, pro-retinol, and hyaluronic acid, it reduces my wrinkles, firms, and brightens. And it's not a procedure. It's just a hardworking moisturizer.
Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. Grab it today in fragrance-free or with SPF 30. Available at your local Walmart.
It's very much connected to the treatment around lynchings, right? The Death Penalty Information Center. I think this was back also in, let me look this up really quick. I believe this was 2020. All right, Cloudflare. I'm a person. I'm busy. All right. Let me get the date on this. This is actually a really good deathpenaltyinfo.org, right? Yeah. So this was September 15th, 2020. This stat. But it shows the states with the highest incidence of lynchings of Black people between 1883 and 1940 are largely the same states that have executed the most Black people over the last 50 years. It's the same fucking thing all the time. It's the same thing. It always goes back to fucking slavery. We wouldn't have mass expansion of detention centers and ICE sweeping up fucking brown people and non-English speaking people and everybody else that they catch in their wake if we had intervened in mass incarceration that disproportionately impacted Black people, but we stopped caring about it. We started talking about how we feel as a form of racial animus. We stopped being issue area experts and started being fucking useless utility people that want to talk about everything all the time. And this leads us right up to Trayvon Martin. And I think we all know what happens there with George Zimmerman, who walks scot-free. And then we can pull all the threads for all the people that we know that happened as a result afterwards, right? From Sandra Bland to Eric Garner to Mike Brown in Ferguson, which was often considered the galvanizing moment. Actually, it was this. This broke through the bullshit lens of color blindness. So the question is, right? Has the confrontation with color, has it actually happened in any meaningful way? Or are we still little bitch boys about race? It's the latter. But I want to remind you again, SFL. What is it? SFL Caribbean. Hold on, I got to pull this. Caribbean Strong. I want to make sure I'm saying it exactly correct, but I have to go through all my little notes. Yes, it's FSL CaribbeanStrong.org. Okay, so go on that with the people of Jamaica. Do our due diligence. We always can make an impact. Ye didn't get up there. Well, Kanye did not get up there and say, oh, you know, I'm gonna shatter some social contract. No. It's what happens when one of us decides to do something with the powers that we have, and we don't need national powers to make national change. Yap so much. I'm sorry. I really thought that this was going to be so short, Corey.
I think you often do, but then I think you often underestimate your brain and the connections that you're making and sort of like the things you want to talk about, which is fine. I think the Dark Woke podcast listeners enjoy it. I think they enjoy a good yap, and I think they all like learning from you.
We'll put some checks and balances on me, I'm sure. But I do appreciate you helping me think this stuff through because it is so contentious. It's something that people aren't willing to talk about. And I'm like, that's why we were so easily beaten culturally, is because we simply will not talk about certain fucking things. And who better to than our side? Look what happens when they do.
Yeah, we can't let them keep owning the narrative because the narrative's crazy.
Did you hear how unhinged that laugh was? People, but anyway, thank you for showing the world that you're real. I think I forced you into this honestly because I was like, see everyone, we are going to figure out a way though. Because Corey's fucking brilliant. And I was like, we just yap so much. We're actually friends. We've been friends for years. And, I'm so glad this happened. Yeah, I'm not letting him go. I told you. I spent 30 Pokeballs on this guy.
Yeah,
I'm keeping him.
I'm chained to his
keeping him.
dining room table right now. Like, you gotta help me. He got me chained up in here like Beyonce got Sia chained up in the basement writing them songs for her.
So what I'll say is, look, like, feel free to like hit us up, write in the comments, send an email. What resonated? What didn't resonate? What do you want to see more of? This is, honest to God, just an introductory conversation that somehow happened because of hurricanes. And send resources to Jamaica. Yes. So with that, I love you all very much. Thank you, Corey. And thank you to each and every one of you that listen. Can't wait to yap more. We're working on the Apple thing.